started paying close attention to details. So this is where I wanted to show you some body language. As I was holding my mentoring appointments or as I was talking to other people, I would pick one piece of body language and I would watch that piece of body language for an entire week. Anywhere I was, I would watch that piece of body language. So I have a list here of a few of them that I would pay attention to. Do you want that? Okay, so one of them was I would start paying attention to eyebrows. So this is separate from our list of going from proficient to mastery. This is under number 4, which is details. Number 4 is pay attention to details. And the details that I paid attention to were this. I watched eyebrows. Because when somebody's eyebrows, have you ever seen somebody's eyebrows do this? When they knit together in the middle, what does that mean? Thinking, concentrating, confused, thinking you're crazy. You're so funny, you're sitting right there. So thinking you're crazy, it has something to do with processing the thought that they just got. And so when I would see eyebrows knit together, then I would pause in the appointment and I'd say, can you teach me back what you just heard? So I would pause and have them teach me back. Every time I would see it, I would pause because I was trying to pay attention to more details. Does that make sense? Okay, kind of have to hurry so I get more of these in. So then the second one that I would pay close attention to was eyes. When eyes go straight to the side. Now, at Master Your Influence, we talk about how all the different places that somebody can look gives different information. Do you remember that? So like up to the left has to do with past and data and numbers, and up to the right has to do with creative and future and these kinds of things. You remember this? Yeah. But that was too much for me at the time. It was too much. I mean, now I'm like watching all of you, and I'm watching how the different eyes move while I'm up here. But at the time, I had to start somewhere. And so I chose straight to the side. Because when somebody looks straight to the side, they're looking towards their ears, which has to do with listening to something that somebody has told them. So when I was talking to people, if they look straight to the side, I would ask them, what was that thought? I would pause and say, what was that thought? And I'd listen for what they tell me. And then I'd ask them, so who taught you that? Who taught you that? And they're like, what do you mean, who taught me that? Well, who taught you? And they'll look to the side again, and they're like, oh, it was Mom. Mom taught me that. Or it was this teacher that taught me that. I would pay attention to eyes moving straight to the side because I would want to know who they're listening to. Who they're listening to. The next one I paid attention to is when people would look down. Because when people look straight down, they're looking at emotions or feelings that are inside of them. And when they're looking at those feelings, now they have an emotional response to whatever we're talking about. So when they would look down, I would pause in my brain and think and take a snapshot of what we were just talking about. Because something in that triggered an emotional response. And remember, we are a byproduct of our thoughts and our emotions. That's what creates who we are, is our thoughts and our emotions. So I paid close attention to when people looked down for an answer. When they looked down when they were talking to me, I paid close attention to that. Do you want some more? Yes. Okay, the next one, there were 2 different eyes, so you can call this 3 or 4, it's up to you. I would pay attention to squishy lips. I know it's really technical, but I was figuring it out as I went. Squishy lips. Pursed, but not just pursed, if they just close tighter than what they normally would. I mean, it can go even to where they pull one lip in, or they pull both lips in. Any of those kinds of things. I started watching for those kind of lips. And anytime I saw those, I would pause and give them a turn to speak. Because when somebody closes their lips, it's a little different when they purse their lips like, okay, then they're like grumpy or frustrated with what you're talking about. But when they just get squishy without having the attitude attached to them, can I put it that way? When they get squishy without the attitude, they need to have a turn to speak. Because your lips are acting like the dam that's keeping the words back that want to come out. And when somebody has squishy lips, if they don't get a turn to talk, then usually they'll like put a finger up to help hold the words back. Or a fist. Or their whole hand. And it's like, okay, they need a turn to talk. And so I started paying close attention to when they were covering or squishy lips and they needed to have a turn. This is one of the reasons why I can build rapport with somebody very quickly, because I recognize when they're needing to have a turn to talk. People need to be able to be heard. People need that. And so, okay, here's a bonus detail I wasn't going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Back going between messy and proficient, another one that I started practicing was listening more than I talk. Listening more than I talk. So I tried to get better at listening and really understanding what I was hearing. Because remember how yesterday we talked about how roots are 7 questions down? You remember that? Well, if roots are 7 questions down, and all we have to do is ask 7 questions, why don't we get to roots more often? Because our brains are trained that after we've asked 3 questions, our brain comes to a conclusion and runs with it. We're not used to asking the full 7 questions. So in going from 1 to 2, and I used the same thing going from 2 to 3, I got better at asking more questions before letting my brain run with a conclusion. And sometimes I still have to catch myself because our humanness will kick in and it wants to come to a conclusion after 3 questions answered, or even 1. We'll ask 1 question and think, oh, I've got the whole picture because they gave me 1 answer. No, we need more. So I would practice listening. Good?